Let's now look at why the Agile approach is so different. Here's something you may have seen before, and that's the holy triangle, so-called, or the iron triangle of time, cost and quality. In a traditional project, the variables are time and cost, and as a result of varying time and cost, in an effort to make sure the projects remain on track, they'll often be fed in extra resources, making it even later. And quality is also compromised. Why? Because as timescales slip and budgets overrun, then the only thing they've got to move is quality. So often full testing will not be done and it'll be shipped early, resulting in customer dissatisfaction. But in fact, the so-called iron triangle was actually a pyramid, if you like to see it this way. It also contains the features, the functionality, if you will. And in a traditional project, the features, the requirements, call it what you will, are fixed from the outset. Therefore, only time and cost can be varied, and as a result of those being varied, as I've just mentioned, quality will often suffer. What Agile does is turn this on its head. Here, what is fixed is time and cost, non-negotiable, and quality also is fixed. Therefore, the only thing which is varied in an Agile project approach are the features. How does it make this work? Well, it doesn't do what a traditional project does and throw extra resources at it. It does it by taking lower priority features and deferring them or dropping them in order to stay on track in terms of time. And by the way, if you're staying on track in terms of time, usually the highest cost is in human or labour cost, so that if you're on time, costs remain within budget. Something called the minimum usable subset, this is used within prioritisation, will be delivered on time and budget. Now, DSDM's well-defined high-level requirements make it easy to spot when an additional detail is needed versus when additions are requested to the project's breadth. This is called scope creep, another big killer on traditional projects. It's one thing having a high-level requirement and expecting more details to emerge later. Another thing altogether when we actually find ourselves having to change what the customer wanted in the first place. And this is called scope creep. An important aspect to consider is that DSDM should be tailored to suit a project's unique needs. And that's an important point to bear in mind, particularly later when we start to look at some of the documentation. You'll learn that Agile emphasizes the use of human interaction and informal communication. And when first looking at the range of documentation, you may think that is at odds with that particular principle, but you'd be wrong. What you'll need to know is the major documentation that would be at your disposal and to decide how you're going to tailor it to suit a project's unique needs. And that includes all other aspects of an Agile project, as we'll learn later. Let's now just remind ourselves of the ATTURN philosophy. The DSDM ATTURN philosophy is that any project must be aligned to clearly defined strategic goals and to focus upon early delivery of real benefits to the business. I've told you this in effect many times already, so that should come as no surprise to you. So how do we make sure that this philosophy is met? Well, by ensuring that stakeholders at all time understand the key business objectives and that stakeholders are empowered to an appropriate level so that they can carry out their responsibilities. At all times, stakeholders must collaborate in order to deliver a fit-for-purpose and correct solution for the business. Part of this philosophy is to accept that change is inevitable. Let's then look at this very useful graphic which summarizes all of this. You'll see here that the philosophy is underpinned by 8 working principles, and it consists of processes, people, products and practices. The processes cover the project life cycle, the people covering their roles and responsibilities, a set of well-defined products. We're talking here about solution, management and business products, which we'll learn about in coming modules, and a set of practices or techniques. We'll look at the 8 working principles in the next module. So let's summarize this philosophy. Stakeholders must buy into this. It's absolutely key. And one of the reasons why is that stakeholders will get a working solution on the agreed date, but they will not get 100% of the solution, which sounds strange at this point. But when you remember I talked about prioritization, That will be agreed with the stakeholders, and by using prioritization, the less important features will be dropped with everyone's agreement. The negotiations are in the detail, not in the major headlines. In other words, as the project progresses, the requirements are better understood, the customers and users will refine their understanding, and change will be welcomed in order to reflect that. So it's within the detail that we'll expect most of the changes to occur, not the major headlines.